Now we move on to our open discussion. So we invite everyone to type in their questions in the Q&A tab or send them anonymously through our no box organizers. Okay, so to start off, I'd like to ask Sam, can you share with us how you integrated the therapeutic community to your center and how different centers can do the same?
Okay, I think in the beginning, the therapeutic community is a template that you need to come up with a lot of tools, a lot of writings, a lot of preambles, all the things that has been practiced in the United States in the early days. And then it came to Asia. They bring everything to Asia, which is, I think, not not very suitable to Asian culture in the context, because in Asia we don't confront people as people on the Western, right? They can confront anyone, but here we are more repressive. We are more polite. So in that sense, we want to make sure that it can be culturally appropriate, and then we just using the concept of TC instead of the franchise itself, using so many tools, which is sometimes for certain clients can be such a burden because so many tasks, so many homeworks they need to be done. So what we need is actually to assure that everybody in the community is being part of treating other people as well. Although it's not clinical treating, but also as a society treating, like someone can also helping on the kitchen, someone can also helping on the laundry, someone can also helping on the housekeeping, you know, those kind of thing. And people can take turns voluntarily, who can, contribute to their community. That's how we integrate the TC as a brand to a concept itself.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sam. I think it gave us an idea on how to actually be practical with these things, on how to integrate TC to our centers. To Zach, I'd like to ask, can you share a bit more about the basic elements of beating addiction? So you've mentioned a bit about the values, motivation, skills, and resources. So can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the greatest challenges of working with people who use drugs in some sort of a problematic way isn't so much the drugs, it's how to make the drugs be the least interesting thing about a person's life. And, that can come in several different ways depending on what the problem really is. So, people come to me in my program. We have an online program, and they've been conditioned to say a story about themselves, that they're unchangeable, that they're bad, that they're doing something incredibly wrong. And it often takes quite a while to just engage with them on a personal level and say, yeah, but who are you, and what seems to be the problem, and how are you, and some very basic common sense questions. So I think that if you just look at any legitimate self-help literature, and then you just say the same rules apply with or without drugs, I can say there broadly that those are the basic elements of life that will make life better with or without drugs.
Thank you very much for that, Zach. So we'd want to, not really specialize on and zero in on the drug use, but really be using our common sense and dealing with this, right?
I would say so. And I think Sam echoed.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if Panki can hear us. Panki, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Hi,
Yes.
Panki. Can you share with us your experience on how you help our community towards your recovery through your services? So you've mentioned some services that you're giving to our partner communities. How did this help them towards your recovery?
Yeah, let they are trained motivational interviewing. So yeah, so means it's a safe space there, and they are skill. It's a skill. It's a behavior skill, a behavior change, doing to recovery, and means the motivational means that they will the client or are the ones doing the timelines. We're just helping them to motivate. There's no such thing as a 6 months program and you're done. It's a lifetime process, and it's their initiative, and we just try to help them until like first, uh, yeah, it's a skill of motivation interviewing, how to get them, you know, to recovery.
Okay.
Because we believe there's no one pill solution in recovery. So yeah, and we try to do harm reduction. What we philosophy is just to, harm reduction, which saves lives. And at first, yeah, we do is in the drop-in center. It's a harm reduction principle. We practice harm reduction principle there. Means yeah, we have to be pragmatic. We have to do first the harm reduction. How because it's being abstain drug using to abstain is not just a one overnight. It's just a long process. Yeah, I
Thank
think
you very much for
that's it.
that. Thank you very much for that, Panki. So, there are questions coming in from the chat. I'll just read one that I think everyone can answer because everyone runs a program with the community. So this is from Terence Lopez. So I'm just gonna read it out. What can be the challenges of running a program with drug with people who use drugs?
Yeah, let me answer that one because we have a really challenging. Is because one why uh the challenge is there that they always ask question: Are you tolerating drug using? We're not. In fact, we didn't start. They started there already in their homes. Maybe they end in the drop-in center. They end it there. I don't know. It's there. So that's one challenging that we are labeled that as a tolerating because we're helping our friends or helping our community. So yeah, and about aside from that, our work is very challenging. Doing the outreach work is very challenging, especially now the stigma is really high, and we are in the war on drugs here in the Philippines. It's very challenging in helping drug users, but yeah, we have to help. Even we don't help, they'll die anyway. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you very much for
thank you.
that, Panky. What about for Zach and Sam? What were the challenges that you've encountered, and maybe you can share with us how you went about these challenges, and how to help our centers here in the Philippines do this.
Go
Go ahead,
ahead, Zach.
Sam.
You want to go first?
Okay, yeah, I will. Well, for me the biggest challenge is there's nothing easy about building up the infrastructure of a person's life. I mean, that's simple. The concept is simple, but it's very difficult to do. But most people I work with in this field, including me, I'd like to think, including me, certainly my two fellow panelists, do that in sort of a natural way. So it can be grueling work. It's on the ground sort of work, but it's rewarding and fun. And I think, just to repeat something I said earlier, one of the most difficult challenges is allowing people to create a new, better story about themselves rather than the one that they've come to me with, or the people that I work with. Instead of I'm bad and I need to change, it's maybe somebody does need to change, but it's not that they're bad, and it's not, maybe they don't need to change in the way that everyone else has already told them to. So we've mentioned motivational interviewing, and I think motivational interviewing done properly can be a great challenge, especially if somebody comes to us with a story preordained to them.
Thank you for that, Zach. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think as Panki and Zach has already mentioned, I would like to add that sometimes the governments, well, the police is also intervene. That become a challenge by providing treatment for people who use drugs. Because I experienced it, there was a harass by the police officer standing in front of the gate while people on harm reduction accessing the services. We have to assure that they feel safe, and then we have to bring the clean needles outside of the centers and bring the dirty. So it just adding more challenges, actually increasing more stigma in the society, because the way they're treating people who are using is the same like the way they're treating criminals. So I think the government need to distinct the interventions they want to do. If you want to see it as the how do you put it? If you want to look at the health approach, then you don't do interventions on the health approach like you do interventions for the supply reduction part, because these people are the one who accessing services. We have their connections, we have their data. They are willing to improve their certain kind of thing in their lives. So we're already working on that. And then the officials, sometimes they intervene that, and then they just gone away, lose track. That is one of the biggest challenges that I would like to add after Panki and Zach has already mentioned.
Thank you very much for that, Sam. I think there's another question related to that from Rainier Bona. So, since we have, war on drugs here in the Philippines and the social political situation and the government incarcerates and is very punitive with these measures, um, how does one encourage the community to do harm reduction work? So, what do you do with your communities and partners to actually encourage them to do harm reduction work? Maybe you can share a bit about this.
Who are you asking? Sorry.
Oh, anyone can share because since everyone is running a center using harm reduction, so I think it would be valuable. You have valuable input on this.
If I may go first, I still have the leftover energy from the last answers. So I think
Good momentum.
yeah, the first thing that we need to do in encouraging community in providing harm reduction services is actually to uh, rebranding or redefining or have a new approach that harm reduction is not letting people to die. It's quite the opposite, because the societies and sometimes some of the government officials think that harm reduction is letting people die. So we need to replace that understanding, and then people will get comfortable. Oh, actually, we are saving life, or actually, we are not promoting negative behavior. Actually, we are promoting positive behaviors towards improvement, this and that. That is missing. So we need to influence in that part, from the governments, from the policymakers, to the people who deliver the services, starting from the neighborhoods. That's what that I can think of.
Sam, I have I have a friend who's extremely conservative here in the States, and of course, I don't think you get very many conservative harm reductionists. And I'm a pretty progressive person, but I asked her. She was opposed to a syringe center here in the city that I live, and I asked her what would it take. Sorry, excuse me, a safe injection facility. And I asked her, what would it take to convince you that this could be a reasonable thing? And we talked for a long time, and she was basically on board with some of the principles. And she said, if I could know in good faith that these are people who are making a contribution to the community, then maybe maybe I'd be less likely to be a not in my backyard kind of a person. I didn't really like the stridentness with which she said it, but I think it's an interesting thing to consider. How can, for the people who say this could be a good idea or this isn't a good idea, and certainly not in my backyard, how can you make that whole community that you're beginning make the backyard look nicer, so to speak? And that's always something that I'm thinking about, how to incorporate people who aren't going to agree, and how you can reconcile that with the people functioning, the people accessing your services. Can you get them, or can you ask them, or can you offer for them to volunteer or maybe do paid work in ways that benefit the community? So that's been an interesting new way of thinking.
Thank you very much for that, Zach. And I think dealing with the practicality of drug use and recovery is really important to help them deal with this. What about Panki? I have a question for you here. For I do care. Oh, I lost it. Let me just check. Okay, so what are the safety and security measures that the organization put in place to protect IDUCARE members and the organization? So how do you keep the members and those accessing your services safe and secure? Okay. We can't hear Panky. We still can't hear Panky. So maybe we can just ask our organizers to put up these questions for Panky, and then we'll just send it to him so that he can answer through chat or through other means. So this is the wonders of going virtual in our summit. So yeah. Okay, so we can move on to our next questions. We have a little bit more time. So um, there's a question here from Jesus. So we talked about how governments or how some of the police has been a challenge for some centers. So do you think that less government intervention in P-Wood's rehabilitation will be more successful in attaining your goal in making change? Sam, I think you mentioned about this a while back. Can you share your answer?
Yeah, I think uh, maybe not limiting the interventions from the government, but actually selective interventions from the government, because governments like to mm, they want to see the result by numbers, right? While our approach is actually it doesn't matter about the numbers, but it's matters about the quality. That's our approach. So when the government want to go by numbers and then they visit our centers, then there will be some conflict approach from our approach and their approach. So I think the government, when they want to go to the centers, uh, if they want to intervene by providing more support on the healthcare areas, we are welcome. But if you're putting in the uniforms, they're putting all the guns and all that to our centers, our client's going to run away. So I think that kind of intervention should not be in any kind of service setting.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sam. What about you, Zach? What do you think about this?
Oh, I'm in full agreement. I mean, if we were talking about motivational interviewing, meaning you're okay where you are, but insofar as you want to make any change, we'll do it at your pace, and maybe we can talk this through and see where you want to go. I mean, that's the opposite of that. Having a punitive approach is opposite. So um, I think the police are necessary, but as Sam was saying, I don't even know if it's that the problem is that we're looking at numbers. It just might be the wrong numbers. So whereas harm reduction services might improve health metrics across the board, people are still looking at, well, are these people using drugs? And if they are, that's illegal, and so it's bad, and so I need to punish them. So somehow we need to get police officers away from drug users. I'm not. There are people much smarter than me who are working this out and figuring out how best to do it. But I agree with Sam that that's a necessity.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think selected intervention, what I got from your answer was selective intervention with the government, and to actually collaborate with them in these interventions to make our our community centers more effective for our users. Okay, so I think we can try Panki again. Panki, can you try unmuting yourself? Okay, we can't hear Panky very well, so that's unfortunate. But let's just get his answers from the organizers so that our our participants can actually know what he thinks about these things, because we really appreciate, and we really recognize that the expertise of Panky in the Philippine setting. Okay, so maybe we can to end their session. I'd like to ask Sam and Zach to have any. Do you have any last key message for our audience and participants before we close the session?
My focus isn't so much how to change the world, even though that's a crucial effort. It's more about changing lives, individual lives, and the lives of our family members and community members and the people that we know and the small parts of the world that we touch. And I think we need to create a more positive universe for ourselves, which may be increasingly difficult given some of the statistics that I've seen tonight about mental illnesses and addictions and fatalities. But life and addiction are changeable for everybody, and that's the point that I always try to get across the most. And despair isn't good, and it's certainly not necessary or inevitable, no matter what the circumstances are. And I really do think that there's hope, especially seeing the great efforts that I've seen put forth tonight and for the few days in this conference. Mainly, I think the best thing that we can do is center our efforts on getting the truth out there, the scientific truth. And I think that the scientific truth is, this is what I suppose Sam was saying, that is the difficulty. It's the scientific truth is identical to the social and existential truths that our world sort of laments and flails against with often blind gestures and destructive results. And one person said to me, who was a client in my program, I was saying something like this, and he said, well, that's just common sense. And I say to that, hail to common sense in our lives and with the people that we work with and live with in all of our societies around the world.
Okay, I'm gonna use my last time to address the concern of one of participants that has not been answered the questions. To Maria Cecilia Zamora. I'm sorry about that, Maria. It's quite a challenge with the new templates. So I'll try to answer the questions. The first one is, any thoughts on life skill based approach on drug recovery? I think life skill is the one that I'm using in my centers that I'm working. Life skill is the core foundations from my personal point of view. Like problem solving, coping skills, emotional regulations, communication skills. I think that kind of things needs to address, need to be taught to the clients as their tools. I really pro to the life skills approach. And on the faith-based interventions, I think faith-based, nothing's wrong with the faith-based, but before you assign a client to go to the faith-based, what is the reason for that? Is it the request from the clients? Is it because of the needs of the clients? Or is it from the family or from the community? So I think that the problem is when we send someone there without their consent, without their full knowledge about what they're going to get from that sentence, that is, I think, is not appropriate. Faith-based or non-faith-based is the same thing. If you put someone without their full knowledge or their consent, I think that there would be a problems. And the message from IEC materials, I think, hold on. I think you need to do a small assessment on the target community that you want to share the IEC materials. I think we need to respect the local wisdom of different communities, different message, different targets. And I'm not really sure how do you then bring the harm reductions at home. If I understood correctly, is it the methadones that we can have a take-home dose, something like that? Usually, there is a procedures. There's a standard guidelines how clients can bring their take-home dose. But in my situations, there are clients who cannot go to the clinics because the clinics open is very short period of time, only from 9 to 2 o'clock. And the client is a driver, so he can only take the medicines after he works like late at night. So he came about 10 p.m. So we distribute the methadones to the clients every night, or even after they being assessed by the doctor, they can have like every 3 days dose. I hope I can answer your questions, Maria Cecilia Zamor. Thank you.
Sam, do you have any last key message for our audience before we close this session?
Nothing, just keep up the good fight, because and this is really funny, is that we are providing services, but it feels like we are fighting. So something is strange here.
So thank you very much, Sam, Zach, and Panki, for sharing your expertise here in our session. So thank you very much to our audience for joining this session on Uncovering Recovery.